Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Craig, and today I'm going to be doing a video for those of you who decided to take the deferred OPM resignation. Listen, I've got a PDF that I put together for this particular category of people. If you want that PDF, just go ahead and check it out on the link. I'll make sure that you get a copy if you send me an email requesting that you want it. And it's just going to be resources for those who have decided to take the OPM deferred resignation that is actually due by tomorrow at midnight, Monday, February the 10th. Listen, I've got some really good ideas for you if you decided to take this deferred resignation and some other things that you really need to think about with regard to the resignation. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing you want to do within the first week that you take the resignation is you want to confirm your separation details. Now, in confirming the separation details, you want to immediately get with your official personnel. Make sure that you get your official separation date. Make sure you have all of the information with regard to life insurance, health insurance, pay any unused leave or anything like that. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to make sure you do financial planning. These are things that have to do with your TSP. These are things that have to do with your other retirement plans that you might have with the government, any health plans and so forth, potential COBRA costs, dental costs, those kinds of things that you wouldn't necessarily consider because the government typically has you covered. Okay, so that's the second thing that you need to do. And then retirement planning. You might be somebody who's close to retirement who has taken the OPM deferred resignation. You want to make sure that your retirement planning is in place before you actually leave. Make sure your dates from your SF50, make sure your date of duty when you first started, make sure all of those things are correct before you leave, because when you leave, it's much harder to get copies of those things, and it's much harder to make sure that you have that on file. So make sure you have all of that stuff squared away before you leave. Any emergency funds that you might have, things of that nature, that you were setting to the side, perhaps any stocks or bonds that you had saving for this particular very day, you want to make sure and you want to make certain that you have all of those things in place. So immediate actions, those are the immediate actions within the first week or so. And this is kind of, let's say this is kind of like, we'll call this kind of phase one, immediate actions within the first week. Phase two, you want to prepare from now until the separation date, your official separation date, which, unless you decide to separate earlier, it should be September 30th, 2025. You want to focus from now until then on any skill development. So, as we talked about in previous videos, many people who work for the federal government, you've got all different kinds of skills you have developed over a course of time. So you want to make sure that you develop those skills between now and September as much as you can, so that if you decide to go into the private workforce, you've got everything you possibly can out of the job that you were doing for the government. So skill development is extremely important. Another really important thing that's going to be really important for those who take the deferred resignation is networking. You want to make sure you network as much as you can. If you haven't networked a lot before now, networking is something that you should get really good at, because when you get to the outside business world, networking is going to become hugely important. There are specific relationships that you need to build with regard to your career. There's specific people that you want to get to know so that they can know how good you are at the particular job that you do whenever you're looking for another job. So you want to make sure that you network as much as you possibly can. You want to do informational interviews. I've got here on my notes that you got to do informational interviews. And all that really means is you want to make sure that the people that are out there in the workforce, in the work sector, you want to make sure that they've got everything about you that ensures that you can do the job. So informational interviews, you conduct interviews with people that you know, people that are in specific work areas that you might be interested in. You want to put out information as much as possible. This is where you get your LinkedIn profile squared away. This is where you touch up your resume and do all of those things and make sure that people know your name. Practice interviewing. You want to make sure that you get in front of friends or family, or get in front of somebody that you don't know and try to convince them that they should hire you for a job. Because one of the things about federal government is typically people interview one time And then after that one time that you interview, you don't really have to interview again unless you're trying to get promoted. Generally speaking, you'll get promoted in the government. If you do a great job and you get good performance appraisals, you get promoted in the government. So a lot of people lose their interviewing skills unless you were the type of government employee who would stay on the job for 2 years or so and then interview for another job, another position at another agency or something like that. And you could hone your interview skills that way. But you want to make sure that you practice interviewing before you actually do a real interview for a job on the outside world, specifically if you're not used to doing it. Okay, phase three, this is after you separate. You want to make sure that you have your job search intact. Phase three is post separation, and you want to make sure you have your job search is intact. Now, I like to use a job search engine called Indeed. There are other people who like to use Monster and different job search engines. It really doesn't matter which one that you use. Just make sure that cover letters, make sure that your resume, make sure that your CV, your curriculum vitae, whatever you'd like to include, make sure all of those things are accurate and up to date when you submit for a job post separation from the government. Make sure all of those things are in place when you submit for a job post separation. Okay, I've got financial management here. Post separation, it's going to be really huge for some people to make sure that they balance living expenses. Again, when you're working for the government, you're used to that check twice a month. But there are some jobs you might get that don't pay as often, and there's some jobs that you get whose pay systems might be different depending on what area of work that you go in. They may not pay every 2 weeks. They may pay quarterly, or there may be other considerations for benefits and such that they'll take out of your every 2 week check. So if you're going into the private sector and getting a private sector job because you decided to take the deferred resignation, make sure that you consider your financial planning post separation. Okay. Now, here's one that's most people forget about. Okay. And I'm going to talk about this one, and then I'm going to say a couple of more things with regard to if you decided to take the OPM deferred resignation. This one is self-care. Now, there are a lot of mental health concerns with regard to these executive orders that have come out, with regard to some of these agency stipulations and regulations, with regard to the restructuring of the government. So if you decide to take the OPM deferred resignation, make sure you take care of yourself. And there's one final thing that I'd say that's really under this category. And this is something that my wife told me to make sure I mention in this video. And that is, if you've been working with the government 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 20, 30 years, doesn't matter how long you've been working with the government, it has been quite an accomplishment for you to work for the government and to become a civil servant. So you should take some time and reflect and look back on the time that you had working as a government civilian. Now, I know many of you have had relationships that you've built. Many of you have had won awards. Many of you have accomplished so many different things. And so as we talk about all of these different aspects and all of these different considerations with regard to you stepping outside of the government, taking the deferred resignation, and leaving the government and going to find another job, take some time to reflect. Take some time to look back on everything that you've been able to accomplish, all of the stories that you might have with friends that you've worked with in different agencies, or maybe you've stayed with the same agency for your whole civil servant career. But make sure you take some time to look over that and be grateful for the time that you were able to spend as a civil servant, and take care of yourself even as you're doing that. Reflect, take a deep breath, and then go on to the next thing that you've planned, or the next element within your decision. So that's the last tip. Take some time, take some self-care, do some reflection, and be encouraged that the next step that you move into, you've gained the skills and the ability and everything to be able to move in that direction. Okay, that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I want to say thank you to everyone who subscribed to my channel. Thank you for everyone who's watching the videos. My major goal here is to help someone. And this video is for people who might just need a little bit more guidance, might need a little bit more encouragement, might need a little bit more direction with regard to taking this particular decision and moving on to somewhere in the private sector. So that's it. Remember, if you look in the description, I'll have that PDF for you. It's 100% free. If you send me an email, I will send it right out to you. So this is Craig signing off for this video. Remember to live royally and live well, and I will see you on the next video. Take care.